Hey, thank you very much. I'm here with Dardoch, who you just said one of the longest series you've ever played. Do you want to just kind of talk to me about the struggles you guys have had trying to get practicing and how it feels to get a win after all that?
Well, our support flew in literally 2 days ago. So we only scrimmed with him for 2 blocks. And yeah, we're not very polished as a team right now, but yeah, getting a win feels good.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's about how teams react to adversity, so to speak. And you guys had 2 come-from-behind victories. Although you seem fairly normal in your reaction after this game, not huge exuberance and not necessarily that disappointed. How do you feel like this team reacted to being in a deficit in these games, and how do you fight back?
To be honest, we're kind of used to falling behind early game because we take so many risks in our lanes and in the jungle. I take a lot of risk as well. So, and we've been scrimming, Cody's been scrimming with different supports since Ole recently got back. So we're always at a deficit somewhere on the map due to lack of synergy or something like that. So we're really used to playing from behind, and we were really comfortable in game.
Yeah, and by the end of it, you ended up having a few clutch plays on Kha'Zix up against a rookie jungler in Acadian who's, actually doing a little bit of trash talking and has started with 5 first bloods. What do you feel about Acadian or even your performance coming into the split?
I think Acadian's really good. I've been friends with him for a long time, taught him a couple things along the way. He was the TLA jungler, so that's pretty obvious I would teach him something. Not a BM, by the way. But yeah, I think he's really good, but I think I'm also very good.
Yeah, and just even talking about your split coming up in particular, you started on Team Liquid, you're now kind of on your second team, the next part of your journey. How are you looking to make strides this year?
This is like the most comfortable I've ever felt in a team where everyone kind of just wants to improve and win. And it's not anyone everyone is really open to criticism and everyone just kind of wants to help each other. So yeah, we're actually a team. Like, it's the first time I've ever been on something that feels like a team instead of just 5 individuals.
Well, awesome, good to hear. Glad to see your support made it in. Hopefully you can get some more of that synergy in the future. Thank you, Dardoch. Let's send it to the desk to close out the day.
Thank you very much, Jat. A very long and back-and-forth 3-game series between Echo Fox and Immortals. But Immortals, they come out on top. They scrape through in that 2-1 victory to start their season off with the series victory.
Yeah, and we heard that they didn't have as much practice time as a lot of the other teams playing this weekend. And I think it kind of showed over the course of the series, just in terms of like shot calling, pick ban. They weren't necessarily on the same page with everyone else in the league. They seem to have different priorities on things. Right. But generally, it seems like their idea on like what they want to ban out of people is good, but maybe their picks aren't quite the same, with the Morgana being a counter to Malzahar, I suppose, but it seems really rough in comparison to something like a Lulu or the other thing people are playing into.
Right, although the win came through, we definitely saw how the Morgana didn't seem to work out against the Malzahar. Really, more than anything, it's that Maokai pick that we see excel in the late game, being the unkillable tank and buying so much time for your team to get your damage dealers in position safely. And of course, Dardoch had a very solid performance on the Kha'Zix, especially moving into the late game. Just of note here, the league average game time for the North American LCS, excluding this series, 37 minutes and 29 seconds, right? So okay. I know we haven't played a ton of games, but that's what we're at. This Echo Fox Immortals average game time was 46:44. So essentially 10 minutes longer per game on that average.
And that's what's going to happen when most of the games are kind of these come from behind victories. I mean, Immortals came back twice to win, as well as, they ended up losing the other game. So I think I owe Dardoch a little bit of an apology. I mentioned how Reignover has, good mentality and seemed to help Team Liquid rebound from behind and take a win versus CLG. I mean, here, 2 come from behind victories, maybe a little unwarranted criticism from me.
Exactly, and we hear in that interview right there, he says that the team environment there is healthy and good, so it's clearly working out for them if they are comfortable playing from behind and communicating and finding their way back into the games. But that was a trend in this series, right? They had multiple come from behind wins, and this is a double-edged sword here, because one is we can talk about Immortals and the fact that they got behind. The other is that we can talk about Echo Fox and persisting issues from season to season, from 2016 to 2017, in that there still seem to be some issues around team play, mid to end game strategy, and actually closing out games.
Right, but on the flip side, you have to say that there's a new strength coming into this season, which is obviously Acadian, who's been a beast in the early game. for every game that he's played in, and it's something that hopefully you can build a foundation on to improve, where if he can keep doing this kind of thing where he snowballs one of the laners, a couple times it's been topside with Looper, this game with Froggen, who opened up the TF to start moving around the map and getting stuff done, if they can ever just take that next step to actually closing the games out, I think they at least have that first step, you know, pretty solid, it seems like, where Acadian seems like a rock for this team.
Right, and that's the difference between last year's Echo Fox and this year's Echo Fox, is they have a foundation this time around. If you're looking at that, again, that top triangle where you've got solid solo laners and a very aggressive early jungler, and if he keeps playing the way he does, they might find ways to eventually take those leads that they've built and close the game out. We'll see if they can do that in their practice. Of course, Immortals was the team that came out on top, so let's go ahead and take a look at some of their fights. 36 minutes into the game, we're around Elder Drake. Immortals going to pick up a big win here. Oh, it's behind us.
Haha. Well, I mean, we see that Echo Fox has been struggling around neutral objectives the whole series. Here they start off onto Ale, they get a pick, they blow him up instantly. That's great and all, but the problem is that Dardoch and the Assassins are running free now. They blew so much CC onto that. Dardoch goes in, gets one kill, gets another reset here, gets one more, one's going onto gate. In the meantime, Flame is on the backside, just trying to tank up as best he can. Pullbelter got his GA pop, but he's going to come back up. And they're eventually going to go turn back onto, actually Pullbelter died, excuse me, but they are going to pick up the Maokai.
I think it's a tough situation to be in Gate's position there, because so many QSSs have been built at this point that it's hard to choose a target. You want to hold that ultimate for one of the two assassins coming in to threaten your backline. At the same time, Ale is the only guy that you confidently kill because he's the one who doesn't have a QSS. And so they got that catch, but as you mentioned, the two assassins running free at that point, and that's what spelled disaster for Echo Fox in that fight.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where you can't blow that much on a support. I understand that a lot of the carries have their QSSs and things like that, but at that point, I mean, you're stuck with the Malzahar pick. Using it on a target you shouldn't bother using it on doesn't necessarily make it the right choice either. It's just you have to be a little bit more patient. And ultimately, I do think that the team comp that Echo Fox had does probably start losing to the one of Immortals the later the game goes. They're clearly focused on being a pick comp with the TF, with the Malzahar, and without those...
And a strong split pusher and lane dominant Jace, right?
Right, so you want to open the map up, go to the Jays, get some picks, and they did that in the early game, but once they started struggling to close the game out and the map ended up where it's like you have to end at the Nexus at some point, they were unable to do that part.
There was that one play where Looper went into the base, and we chatted about this a little bit. Would have liked to have seen more commitment to that play, where actually turning onto the second Nexus turret could have threatened more of an end there and opened up your team to either move to the mid lane and take a turret there, or even retreat back to the Baron and threaten that as a trade.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those situations where you can see that they're not 100% confident in what they want to do in the late game. They did have that one good call where they took the top inner turret and then they kind of backed off, faked like they were gone, and they go return to the inhib turret. And that stuff's good to see, where that's like tricky plays. You want to see them start nailing the basic Baron control, get a Baron, 4-1, like that kind of stuff.
Right, those are very in-the-moment situations.
Right.
We want to see them set something up and play it out as a strategy, 5-10 minutes out, per se. But hey, this was a crazy long game. Let's go ahead and get a refresh on how it ended with the final team fight here that, once again, goes in favor of Immortals.
Yeah, and it really is this kind of situation where, once again, they're doing these tricky plays, and it's not just the basic, we got in a team fight here. They're trying to do some split push to finish the game off. Froggen barely gets picked off. Good play by Pullbelter to get that, and a good snipe follow-up by Cody-san. From there, Gate gets picked off as well, and prior to this, Dardoch had gotten a couple kills as well, picking up Keith, who's also going to respawn eventually, but it's just 2v5, and the TPs are going to come in from the rest of Immortals eventually. Yep. And it's just too hard to expect them to hold here. It's going to be a long sequence where they're going to end up double TPing in before ultimately forcing taking the Nexus, but you can't expect
Right, again, it's akin to what we were just talking about, where Echo Fox made some solid, in-the-moment decisions. Hey, this is a cool way to spread the map out. We're going to get these inhibs. But this isn't a well-thought-out strategy because they don't have an exit plan. It's not safe, right?
This is a reaction to Keith getting picked.
Yeah.
This is not, we wanted to be in their base doing this crazy stuff. And honestly, if Froggen managed to get out, which was really close to happening, if he's able to get his reset off and defend against the that TP play that came in, maybe they can hold out just long enough, because Keith did respawn towards the end. If it's 4v5, maybe they can do it, but at the end of the day, there was just too many errors at the end of the game with people getting caught out.
Yeah, lingering issues for Echo Fox here in the first weekend of the LCS. Player of the game, though, this time around is going to go to Dardoch. Again, that Kha'Zix play, especially near the late game, really biding his time, understanding what cooldowns to wait for before he enters the fight.
Yeah, that's really the kind of thing you need to see out of an assassin player, and we are in a little bit of an assassin meta in the jungle with Rengar and Kha'Zix probably being the top 2 junglers, both assassins. So you need to see that kind of patience, not just in the moment when you're in the team fight and knowing when to go in, but when's the right team fight to take. And they might have struggled with that a little bit, but towards the end of the game, they were basically winning every team fight, and they were getting picks outside the team fights as well.
Well, that's going to close out the Immortals Echo Fox series. Now, those of you who weren't able to tune into NALCS 2, Phoenix 1 versus Dignitas, we just wanted to pull to your attention a couple plays here, and specifically Someday, as there was a lot of hype around him coming into the league. In the first 2 games of the series, Phoenix 1 opted to ban out Fiora, saying we're not going to give him the opportunity to carry like that. Game 3, they don't ban out Fiora, and here's what happens.
Yeah, I mean, this is what you're scared of when the superstar LCK top laner coming in to carry a team. You give him Fiora, after banning it twice, he's going to start going off. This is going to be an early 2-kill advantage that they're going to get with Chaser and Someday being that tag team that they brought over. They get these, and then the other thing was Keen was actually a big part of this as well. They rode off the back of Someday setting these plays up, but Chaser and Keen consistently came in to get the kills, and Someday is going to be the big carry for this team, especially when it gets into this late team fight that happens as we see that they try to force around Baron, Phoenix 1, and they're able to collapse in. It starts out with the arrow coming in. We see it just on the top side above Baron. Someday's going to come TP in. And it looks like this fight might go really bad for them, actually, as it keeps playing out. It seems like they're pretty grouped up on Phoenix 1. They go into Someday. But as people slowly start getting lower and lower, Someday's going to find the perfect time to re-engage and start picking up the kills on P1.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is, as you mentioned, a situation where we're looking at this, and essentially Phoenix 1 took the Baron for free. That's why they were so confident in being able to take the fight themselves, thinking they were going to come out on top. But great positioning by Someday, very decisive charge in there, eliminates one of the high damage dealers, gets that AoE heal out onto the field, and then it's fair game for the rest of Dignitas to storm into the pit.
And it wouldn't be fair not to mention Laud in that game, because as much attention as Someday pulled, and even from his own team, giving him a lot of attention to keep snowballing, Laud on the other time was winning his 2v2 matchup, and that was one of the concerns about this team is, how's the bot lane going to hold? Is it going to be able to match up? And it did, better than fine. They carried, actually, and Laud picked up the player of the game.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point because, again, coming in, there's a lot of hype around this roster, and people are saying, well, if there's going to be one person that's going to let this roster down, it's going to be the bot lane, maybe specifically the ADC. But, Laud and Xpecial in that 2v2, winning out, and then, of course, as you mentioned, the scoreline and the Ultimate Player of the Game award for Laud to come away with it. Well, that's going to conclude day 2, so let's go ahead and take a look at how our standings are shaping up. C9, FlyQuest, Liquid, and Dignitas all leave the first 2 days unscathed. Immortals remains undefeated as well, and Phoenix 1 falls to 6th with a win and a loss. CLG, NV, TSM, and Fox remain winless so far. But tomorrow, we've got some more hype matchups coming your way that are sure to shake up these standings. So over on NALCS 1, we've got TSM versus Immortals, followed by Team Dignitas going toe-to-toe with Cloud9. And over on NALCS 2, NV takes on Counterlogic Gaming with Team Liquid facing off against FlyQuest later on. So of those 4 matches, what's the big one that's jumping out at you?
I think it has to be Dignitas versus C9. We talked a little bit about the litmus test teams still in the league being TSM, C9, and CLG. This is one of the big, probably the most hyped up kind of team that imported a lot of players, and Dignitas going up against the most hyped up returning team in Cloud9. So this is going to be a huge test for Dig really early on in the season, and they looked a little shaky today, so they're going to have to bring their A game tomorrow.
Oh, absolutely. When you look at Cloud9's play against TSM on Friday, the fact that they looked fairly crisp with a rookie jungler who was playing essentially with no nerves, or what looked to be no nerves. They're putting up big performances. That's a big opponent for you to walk into as this newly formed roster in Dignitas rejoining the North American LCS. But if you can come away with a victory here, then essentially statement win, sky's the limit for this roster at that point. So we'll have to see how it all plays out. From all of us here, though, in the live broadcast crew, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you here tomorrow to help us conclude our first week of the 2017 North American LCS. So have a good night.